Next up on this food section is called Farmland Restoration. There are lots of billions of acres, well, at least a billion acre of abandoned farmland. Essentially, they are used up either for crop growth or livestock grazing and so on, some sort of a food production, and the soil has been compacted or the nutrition has been lost or maybe climate has changed, and essentially it becomes cheaper to abandon the land, walk away and find some other livelihood. So this is a serious concern, and there is a effort, or there are many studies at least, that show that there is a huge restoration potential of these abandoned farmlands, or also called degraded lands, that can actually enhance carbon sequestration in the soil, as well as the vegetation that can be grown on top, including maybe trees, gardens can be made useful, plus the livelihoods, biodiversity, productivity can be restored as well. So this is ranked by 2050 at number 23 with 14.08 gigatons potential for reducing CO2 emissions, and cost of net cost of $72.2 billion US dollars, and expected net savings of 1.34 trillion US dollars. So almost seem brainless ideas, and yet they are not so easy to implement, because one way of doing that is called no action. You just let the land recover by itself, and the default mode is that something will keep growing unless it's a pure desert. Abandoned lands usually are not. They may be degraded, but there may be still enough rain, so eventually some biodiversity will come back. But this study from Nature shows that if you look at the biodiversity before the land got abandoned versus the evolution over years since agricultural abandonment, it does recover, but never reaches the original level of biodiversity. There is a loss over time. Productivity, the same thing, and you can measure it in many ways. Species richness, again, doesn't come back to 100%, except in few locations where there is actually additional biodiversity gain, additional productivity gain, and species richness, and so on. Species evenness also decreases from the time that it is abandoned to the recovery time without any action. So there is something about the loss that happens with the land use and degradation that makes it maybe over 1,000 years it will recover, but in human lifetimes it doesn't seem to recover. Just to look at the numbers, land use over the long term over the world, from going back to zero common era to 2016, you can see that grazing land use has increased, with built up area actually looking pretty small compared to that, even though urbanization is a serious issue, especially habitation along coastlines is a serious concern as well. So cropland has also been increased over the years to now almost 1.5 billion hectares, but there is some evidence that the Green Revolution and other enhanced yields over land actually reduces the amount of yield per let's say kilogram of grain or food grown over these croplands. Okay, so that has to be kept in mind. But the grazing land, we have to remember the livestock issue that we just talked about in terms of plant-rich diet, reducing meat consumption. Agricultural area specifically over the long term, so this is a total area land use for agriculture measured as a combination of land for arable farming or cropland and grazing in hectares, looking at different regions. So Oceania, which includes Australia and the regions, islands, Africa, India, China, rest of Asia, excluding India and China, Middle East, Brazil, and so on. And you can see here some reductions at the end from 1950 onwards in Canada, US, Brazil, and so on. But this is a combination of things of how the food needs are being met by reduced croplands and grazing lands. Okay, it's actually yeah. So this is an example in the Gulu district of Uganda, where villagers are being taught how to do perma gardening, which is a way of using natural methods like water saving practices, soil fertility, companion planting knowledge, and enriched raised beds that you can see here to make permanent gardens. So these are natural methods, much more eco-friendly, much more native species friendly, much more water friendly, and so on and so forth. So permaculture, permagardening are very important in that sense as well for the environment. Currently, 1 billion acres of farmland have been abandoned due to land degradation. We estimate that by 2050, 424 million acres could be restored and converted to regenerative agriculture. So it's a way of restoring soil carbon, soil nutrient, increasing soil moisture persistence, and so on, and other productive carbon-friendly farming systems for a combined emission impact of 14.1 gigatons of carbon dioxide. This solution could provide a financial return of $1.3 trillion over 3 decades on an investment of $72 billion while producing an additional 9.5 billion tons of food. Doesn't even talk about employment opportunities, co-benefits on water, soil health, food security, and so on. Okay, so again, another good solution under food section in terms of farmland restoration. We haven't gone into the details, but there are many studies which talk about the methods of recovering, as I said, active restoration versus passive restoration, and so on.